with that, let's go ahead and talk about our last topic of the day, which is Andor. Boy, oh boy, did Andor truly change my mind after watching the first two seasons of this, or the only two seasons of the show. I finished season 2 about a week ago. And good on Disney for creating a show that was truly a show that had always been asked for. Make something in the Star Wars universe that doesn't involve Luke, Leia, Jedi, any of that. Make it about the people on the ground. And this show certainly delivers in so many different ways. One, it truly gives you amazing dialogue to work with. The characters are so fully fleshed out. They have the time to do that. I mean, there's 12 episodes a pop, so 24 episodes are about an hour long. They have 24 hours to develop each of these characters. But it truly, their dialogue and their development truly give Rogue One, which is the capstone piece of Andor, the movie that came out 10 years ago, so much more weight, so much more gravitas for what's going on. And very rarely have I watched a television show that gave a movie that had come out 10 years ago so much more weight and made it better than it already was. I don't think that's a hot take, really. I think that people kind of think that that Rogue One was a good movie. It wasn't until like Solo that the criticism of the movies kind of came out. But Andor really delivered. It is slow to begin with. It is a slow build that crescendos hard in the middle. Really, every like fifth or sixth episode, there's just something crazy going on. And if you really look at the show, it's 12 episodes apiece, but they're really split into like 4 seasons with 6 episodes a pop, because there are some big time jumps that you're going to have to deal with, and it develops excuse me, it develops it kind of feels like it's segmented that way, where it's like, oh, it probably should have ended here in maybe a year. I'm so glad they didn't do that, because to be honest, some of the break between season 1, episode 6, and season 7, when he's imprisoned and when he's, put in that thing, it feels like a different show just happened. Season 2 starts off very, very differently. They kind of respond to like the slow build of season 1 by having Cassian, steal a TIE fighter and then fly it to this rendezvous point. He's deeply entrenched in the rebellion, and eventually, slowly but surely, everything starts to collide, kind of like a Herald in improv or something like that. Like, it's the characters that we have been seeing build up, take these different turns. In Dedra, the ISB agent, or Cyril, the wannabe excellent ISB agent, they are slowly but surely in different circumstances, but they're after the same stuff. We start to see the kind of building of the Death Star, and how slowly but surely these Luthen's agents and his efforts are getting the word out, and his agents are getting the word out of the super weapon, and how the public of Star Wars gets to come to realize that what they're doing, the Imperials, covertly, is actually in favor for this super weapon that they're developing, that we all know because of the Star Wars films. It gives such depth. It also takes away a little bit from the movies, because of how serious and how deep and how large the sacrifices are for these characters in order to just transmit plans. Because at the end of the day, this all becomes about Rogue One. It makes you kind of feel like the Jedi missions and the actual films of Star Wars are just kind of a little silly, because they've deeply entrenched these characters in such realism that for the first time, things like a stormtrooper don't seem like a goofy man in a white suit who has terrible aim. For the first time, they're setting the scene in the context properly so that a stormtrooper really does feel like a threat. That infiltrating an Imperial hospital seems like it could be a suicide mission. That working inside of a prison could seem like a life sentence for one of the characters. They do such a good job world building in this in a way that the Star Wars movies probably can't do, because there's not enough time and not enough script time to really give you that kind of weight and that kind of gravitas. Now, there are some things that happen in early in season 2 that to me didn't feel like Star Wars. Felt a lot more like the dramas, like HBO kind of dramas, influence kind of seeped into the Star Wars universe. Specifically, I'm talking about there's a moment where Bix has this fight, physical altercation with an Imperial agent that feels creepy. It feels something like that probably shouldn't be in the universe, even though that, you know, his advance is something that is plausible. It feels like it goes against the Star Wars grain a little bit, even though it's because at the end of the day, Star Wars is for children, right? Like it's not like a serious drama, right? We still got to remember, like, one of the main characters is still like an overgrown booger. I mean, give me a break, right? So there are moments where it does miss a little bit, but then it's so fast that it kind of, it comes and goes and it leaves. So I think that all in all, the effort by Tony Gilroy and by the Gilroy family, who have been involved with Star Wars since like the Clone Wars, I believe, they do a good job building that world, but they do kind of miss on certain points that I'm like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars anymore. They do a great job with wrapping up everyone's character arc, whether it's Bix, who really feels like by the end of the series it feels like a cop out, and then you understand that they're twisting the knife a little bit more when you realize why she had to do what she had to do without spoiling anything. The relationship between Cyril and Dedra is devastating. I mean, not to mention too that Cyril is chasing a man who doesn't know who he is, and that is just a horrible. You start feeling for the Imperial characters in the show, which I think is just such a big win. When you can feel the empathy for the enemy, for the antagonist, and you understand their motivations, that is such a huge writing win. That it makes the show worth watching just for that, because you feel for them. Small characters like Cyril's mother, seeing the sacrifice after Gorman is completely destroyed, seeing her reaction and knowing her character was very, very tough on Cyril, and seeing her reaction to knowing that she's probably lost her son is also very, very powerful. They do such a good job just wrapping up these people's arcs. Also, Dedra ends up in the same, in a circumstance that's very, very familiar. If you watch season 1 of Andor. My only other negatives of the show is that it does take a long time to get going, and I think that you need to watch Rogue One before you undertake this series if you were gonna watch it. If you haven't already watched it or you haven't finished season 2, do yourself a favor, watch Rogue One. Watch where they're writing to. It had been 10 years since I had seen anything about Rogue One. So when characters like Saw Gerrera came back, it wasn't as impactful for me, because it took me until after watching season 2 to go, oh, this is all connects. Of course, he's the link to Jyn Orso. also there are certain characters like that are with Cassian on the time in Rogue One in that movie that show up late game in season 2 that again just don't have the same impact unless you've watched the show, unless you're familiar with the material that it's leading up to. So that's what I would do differently. Had I watched that, had I known I was going into Rogue One, Andor, I would watch Rogue One beforehand to make sure that I was familiar with what everything's leading up to. And then the last thing is, this is probably the best Star Wars thing that Disney has ever created. And I say that knowing that The Mandalorian exists, knowing how good The Mandalorian was, how Book of Boba Fett was great. I've not watched Ashoka or The Acolyte, but I will say that there was something nice about feeling the sacrifice that the people were making on the ground that made Star Wars that much better. So much of Star Wars is just around the Jedi and the midichlorians and all the kind of fabled, the fabled Chosen One and Anakin and all this stuff, and it's centered around this one family. Something that the sequels didn't even get out of the grasp of. They didn't really fall far from the Skywalker family in that saga. There is something about this series that makes the whole world seem like a lived-in world because you see the people sacrifice and you see Cassian sacrifice. Kudos on Disney again for making an entire series based around that one moment in Rogue One where Cassian says to Jyn, some people don't get to choose when they join the rebellion. And she says, you can't talk your way out of it. And he says, I don't have to. Like, seeing his sacrifice and seeing what he's giving up, seeing even the things he's indirectly giving up because he doesn't know about, is incredibly powerful. And I wish there was a season 3. I know that there can't be. They wrap it up pretty quickly. But, man, what a joyride that this series has been from the very beginning, and what a roller coaster it's been, because there were times where I'm like, I don't like this series at all. Who is Mon Mothma? That was a big that was a big revelation to me when I'm like, oh yeah, she's in the movies. Okay, all right, gotcha. But yeah, what a great series by them, and what a beautiful wrap up. And again, that's Andor season 2, 2 seasons, 12 episodes a pop. Probably one of the best things that Star Wars has created, and I don't want to say justifies the sale to Disney, but I feel like this is just such a good complementary piece to the Star Wars universe, seeing things deeply entrenched in the people of the galaxy as opposed to the Jedi of the galaxy. So